Hey everybody, Ben Nelson, the Everyday Real Estate Investor here. Thanks for joining me on another episode of the podcast. Man, you ever just have one of those weeks that just a lot going on, trying to fit everything in and can't quite do that. There just doesn't seem to be enough time in the day, right? So lots going on, lots of things that I'm trying to work through. Some things in my personal life, and lots of good things too. Just building some new things and building my team and adding some new things in. So just trying to work my way through all of that, and it's just busy. So self-admittedly, I am not as prepared as I would normally like to be for a podcast episode, but for consistency's sake, I want to make sure I continue to get episodes out for everybody and just be consistent. So I picked a topic that not completely winging it. I've got some thoughts here. I think you are going to get some out of this. And the topic for today is questions to ask yourself before investing and determining your investment strategy. And I think this is something that if you're just starting out, obviously is very important. But this is something that you can do at certain points through your investing career too, because things change, life happens, life circumstances, risk tolerance, just an event can happen in your life that can maybe change the direction of what you're wanting to do. So it's always good, maybe at major life events and also kind of just from time to time throughout your investing to ask yourself some of these questions and make sure you're doing what you want to be doing and need to be doing for your real estate investment, and making sure you're understanding what your goals are and your investing is in alignment with that. So here we go. We are going to jump right in, and I'm just going to throw some of these questions out there, some of my thoughts. Hopefully, you are taking some notes, and you, after this podcast, you go ask yourself some of these questions and write down the answers and make sure that you're on the right path if you're already investing, or starting in the right direction if you are just getting started. So first question to ask yourself: what is your main goal in investing? Because investing can do different things for you. It can create cash flow, it can build equity, it can do a combination of those. It can create chunks of cash. So it really depends on what your goal is, and you really need to start with that, because that's going to determine a lot of other things. And we've talked about that on other episodes, that if you pick a market or a type of product, things like that, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but if you start with that, then, and you're not thinking about what your goal is, you may be totally investing in the wrong thing, because you're starting with a later part of the process first. So understanding your goal, what you need real estate investing to do for you, is one of the first questions that you should be asking yourself. So start there. From there, you want to be asking a lot of additional questions. So how much risk am I willing to take? Everybody has different risk tolerances and different strategies, different markets, different ways of going about investing are going to involve more or less risk, right? So, um, being a private money lender and lending at a very low loan to value ratio is a much different proposition than putting your money in someone's deal as equity, right? So, and there's lots and lots of things in between. So, you have to look at what risk are you willing to take. Are you very, very conservative, or are you willing to take more risk for maybe more return? And or is it somewhere in the middle, right? You're not going to probably be completely willing to just put your money out there, hopefully not, and just hey, I'm going to risk it and roll the dice on it, but I've got a huge possible return, but I've also got a chance to lose it all. Hopefully you're not doing that, but hopefully you understand risk is part of the game, and there's nothing that's completely without risk. But you maybe lean towards more risk adverse, and that's okay. But you need to know that going into that, because that is going to determine, what options are going to be available to you. How much do I have to invest? Obviously, this is going to determine some as well, right? And it's going to, as we get into some of these other questions here, it may force you to go a different direction, depending on, maybe you don't have as much to work with, right? But, that's going to determine your strategy. You're not going to be able to go buy something in the Midwest or wherever that's a really good cash flow market and just pay cash for it if you don't have the cash to do it, right? So you have to determine how much do I have to work with, how much do I have to invest, how much am I willing to invest, and start there so that you are again narrowing it down to the right strategy. This one is really important, and I didn't think about really very much when I got involved in real estate investing to begin with. And this is where I say, for me, this is where I'm like, I need to reassess some of this stuff, right? But as an investor, you should be doing that anyway, as I said at the beginning. But how hands-on do I want to be, or can I be in my investing? And I'll get to that part here in a second. So rehabbing projects is a lot of hands-on, even if you're not doing it yourself. Now, my first projects, I got very hands-on, and I was on the job site doing some of the work and all of that stuff. So, kind of depending on what you're willing to do, what your skill set is, what kind of time you have to invest, personally in your investment. That's going to determine some of that as well, right? But how hands-on do you want to be? Do you want to be completely passive? Do you want some involvement? Are you all in, hands-on? Let's get roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty, and I want to rehab these projects myself. You got to determine that level of involvement, and that's going to be based on kind of the next question, which is how much time do I want or can I spend on my investing, right? If you're super busy, you have your own another business that is taking up all your time, or you just don't have the desire to add, something like that in, something that's take a heavy amount of your time and energy, then that's going to determine your strategy as well, right? Rehabbing projects, wholesaling takes a lot of effort. A lot of those things take a lot of time to hunt down deals and build those relationships and find those deals that you're either passing along to someone else as a wholesaler or taking down, and then you got to do the project and do the work, right? So and going back to the previous question, I say, how hands-on do I want to be or can I be? Sometimes the money that you're using is going to determine that as well. There are rules around. I'm not going to get into it right now. I do plan on having someone on the show here, hopefully in the next few episodes, talking about this very topic. But if you are using, say, retirement funds to invest, you have a different set of rules that you have to play by, and you have a different level of involvement that you can have in a project and different things that you can do. So that is also going to potentially determine what strategy is going to work for you. It is where the money's coming from, and is it limited in that way where you can't do certain things within a project, right? So more on that when we have someone that is an expert in that and can speak to all those things on the show. But these are all things you need to consider and ask yourself when you're determining your strategy. So we touched on how much time do I want to spend. That's very important, because every strategy, being passive, you're never not involved at all. You always have to spend some time on your investing, or you shouldn't be just finding some syndicator and saying, hey, here's 50 or 100 grand, go make some money for me. Hopefully you're spending more time than that, vetting the deal, vetting the sponsor of the deal, all looking at the market. It's definitely not going to be as much time as sourcing the deal and managing the project and managing the other investors and all of that stuff. But you should be spending some time. Otherwise, if you lose money, you really got no one to blame but yourself, because you need to be vetting all that stuff and doing some of the research, right? So you're never gonna have no time that you're investing in it. You're gonna have some time, but what level is that? How much time can you or do you want to spend on it? Okay, this is another good one. Am I willing to work with partners or invest with others, or do I want to do this on my own? And this answer, so people have different comfort levels with this. I know people that are just completely against partnerships and, just maybe a bad experience, and they're just not willing to do that. They feel like they want to control it themselves. And I know people that are like, hey, let's get 10 of us together, or bring a bunch of investors on board, and let's go big, and we can do more together. And I'm not saying one is right or wrong. You have to ask yourself that question. I feel like you can do more together, and you can do the bigger deals and get some better returns when you're willing to look at those opportunities. But there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I just want to invest by myself. I want to, buy a couple properties and, a property or two a year and just build my own portfolio. Hey, it's better than not buying real estate at all. So, you got to ask yourself that question though. And then again, some of the earlier questions that we asked, how much do I have to invest? How much time do I have? That's going to, depending on those answers, you may not initially say, hey, you may initially say, hey, I don't really want to work with other people. I want to do this on my own. And then you kind of look back and say, well, I only have this much to work with, and I really don't have a ton of time. And you may have to readdress that and adjust it a little bit, right? Maybe you partner with someone, and maybe your goal is to go solo at some point, but you have to start off with a partnership or something, right? And if you do that, you may find that a partnership's not such a bad idea, right? Because you can have a couple other people coming to the table. Everybody's sharing the risk. Everybody's sharing the responsibilities, or should be anyway. And you can do some bigger deals than you could have on your own. And you kind of split that. You're splitting your profits, but you're also sharing the risk, like I said, and you're sharing in the time and all of the requirements of the investment. So this is a big one. So meeting with some folks recently, and this is a big part of determining your strategy. How much time do I have to achieve my goal? Okay, going back to the first question, what's the main goal? And maybe it's to provide retirement income. And so you have to look at, what does that horizon look like? How long do you have to build that? Does that look like putting an asset, having an asset that you can sell and create equity over that time frame, and then sell it and put it in something else where you can get an income that way? Or is it just to get direct income from the property and buy some properties and pay it down and have the cash flow? And there's all sorts of strategy that can go into that I won't get into right now, but very important question, because you have to, is it 10 years, or is it 20 years, or is it 30 years? Because that is going to determine what strategies are going to work, what kind of numbers you have to look at, maybe even reconsidering strategies that you wouldn't have before, because your time frame is shorter, and so maybe you have to take a little bit more risk than what you would normally do, right? So you can see how these questions all play off of each other. You may answer one way, and then you get to another question, and then you know what, I'm going to have to go back and reevaluate that one, I think, because these two things don't line up and are not going to work together very well. So just keep that in mind. This may be a little bit, you may have to be a little bit flexible, and you may have to be willing to go back and re-answer a question as you're thinking this through. This is not a just answer the question and move on. This is it's gonna change maybe based on how you answer a question later on. Okay, what kind of strategies will help you reach your goals? So now we get into the strategies themselves, right? We've talked about wholesaling. We've talked about investing in syndications, being passive, flipping properties, buying something and doing a rehab and refinancing it, and pulling that equity out and doing it again, or just buying turnkey for cash flow. There's a whole bunch of other nuances and offshoots of those, and other strategies as well. So what kind of strategies are going to help you reach your goals? Well, if your goal is cash flow, then probably doesn't make sense to flip properties, right? They really don't. That's not what you're doing. You're creating chunks of cash with flipping properties, right? Maybe it's a piece of it, right? You can have tiered plans where hey, I'm gonna flip or wholesale some properties, and I'm going to use that cash. Then I'm going to put that into cash flow properties, and I'm going to live off the cash flow. So you can have multi-tiered strategies too. That's totally fine. But you have to go back to those prior questions, right? Do I have the time to do those initial things that it's going to take more time for me to do those strategies up front to be able to put that money into something and have more passive income later? Do you have the ability to do that, to peel away that time and make that happen? And it's not even just the time to do it, right? It could be the time to learn the strategy. and to learn the market and to learn how to analyze. I mean, there's more than just the actual time to do it. There's the time to learn the strategy as well. So, so what kind of strategies will help you reach your goals? Is it turnkey? Is it flipping? All those things, value add. Is it a combination thereof, or is it multi-tiered, where you start with one and then pivot to something else? Which is definitely, it's a great strategy. You can even do that. You can do that within different markets, different asset classes as well. People do that all the time, right? You maybe flip some properties to, single family homes to get some cash, and then you shift it to maybe a different market where you can't force as much equity, but as higher cash flow. So lots of ways you can look at multi-tiered strategies in that way. And then this kind of ties into that, dovetails into that a little bit. Is my local market able to deliver the results I want, or do I need to consider other markets? A lot of people start off just buying in their own market. Nothing wrong with that. But if it doesn't match the strategy that you are trying to go after, the goals you're trying to achieve, it's going to make it a lot harder to reach those goals, right? And maybe you won't even be able to achieve it. And without asking those questions, these questions that we're going through, you won't know if your market is going to deliver the results you want, because you don't know what the results are that you want, right? So starting with that end in mind, right? And what do you really want to happen? What are you willing to do? What do you have available at your disposal? And actually, I'm gonna add a question in here, kind of on the what do I have to invest, that we asked way back at the beginning. Everybody's mind goes to the financial side of it. And I'll admit, that's what I had in mind when I wrote the question down. But um, you may have something else to invest, right? There are other resources other than capital. Maybe you do have lots of time, but not a lot of capital. Maybe you have some knowledge. Maybe you have, some connections. So evaluate all of that stuff, not just the funds that you have in the bank, or the funds that you have in a retirement account. Look at what other resources you have, because maybe you have something else that you can bring to the table, especially if you are willing to consider partnerships and things like that. If you can bring, something else to the table, hustle and connections, or, chasing down deals or something like that, but you don't have the capital, you're still bringing value, and you're still able to get yourself in the game. And whether that's, just getting started or stepping up to the next level, if you can hustle and provide that factor and bring deals, man, there's people that have money and know how to evaluate deals, but not a lot of time. And you're providing a huge value if you can bring a solid deal to them. So just kind of a sidebar that I forgot when I had been talking about how much do you have invested. It's more, what do you have to invest, not just capital, but other resources as well. Okay, so back to remembering to look at your local market, make sure it's going to do what you need it to do, and match your risk tolerance and the end result that you want, and all of those things. Okay, and then should I diversify among strategies, markets, asset class, or should I stay focused on one thing? And there's, I think, benefits and positives to both, right? Diversification is the big thing to spread risk and make sure that you don't have, quote unquote, all of your eggs in one basket. And I'm not saying that that's wrong either, because yeah, there's certainly reasons to do that, because if you're putting all your retirement out there, you're putting all your capital into something that, hey, if this goes south, I'm going to lose everything. That may not be a great idea, right? But at the same time, you don't want to spread yourself too thin. You want to be able to know what's going on with your investments. And if you're spread across too many markets, and you're spread across too many asset classes, if you're spread across too many deals, it's easier to lose track of that stuff as well. So, but what this kind of goes back and ties in with that, how, what's your risk tolerance, and what kind of risk are you willing to take? Are you willing to put a lot more capital towards, one deal because the deal is solid, and looks good and should get you a really good return? Or are you going to be more conservative and spread that risk out? And with that typically comes lower returns, right? So this is absolutely not every question that you should ask. This is just to kind of get you. I think these are great questions to start with. And then just asking a lot of those internal questions about what you're trying to achieve and how you want your day-to-day to look, how much time you want to invest in your real estate investing, um, the kinds of things that you want to be doing, the people you want to be working with and talking to, or not, if you're, super introverted, right? And you just want it. There's all sorts of things to consider. And by the way, on that note, if you listen to my podcast, and if you didn't, I highly recommend listening to it. But Seth Pacom, great guy, syndicator, um, fairly self-admittedly shy. So, on that introverted comment, don't take that as like, hey, you can't get out there and invest. So I just want to make sure that that's that is not interpreted in that way. So there are ways to be kind of more behind the scenes, not doing that stuff in investing in real estate. But if you have a passion for a certain type of real estate that doesn't involve being in front of people, on a day-to-day basis and talking to people and putting yourself out there, just because you're introverted doesn't mean you can't do it. So, okay. So ask yourself these questions. I want you to be looking at these. I want you to spend some time on it. I want you, whether you're starting out or whether you're, maybe I need to reconsider and like look at it, make sure I'm on the right path. Highly advise doing this. Add some of your own questions in to this. And actually, if you could, I would love to hear your questions that you are asking, so that we can share those with others that are doing this. And, you guys have a lot of great ideas, I know, and some great questions that I should be asking myself and that everybody else should be asking. So please share those, and make sure that we're collaborating, and drop them in comments on my YouTube channel, or on my Facebook page or somewhere, so we can be adding those in, and come up with a list that's going to work for everybody and going to ask even some more great questions to help you dial in on what you want to be doing and should be doing with your real estate investing to get you where you want to go. After you ask all the questions, you have to take that, you have to map out a plan. You have to make sure your market and your strategy is lined up with your goals, and don't just go out and just wing it, like I'm doing a little bit on this podcast here, right? Self-admittedly at the beginning, but make sure you're mapping out a plan, because without a plan, you're gonna take all these. You're gonna be like the Israelites in the desert and walking all over the place, and walking in circles, not getting where you're going, not getting to the promised land, because you're not following a map or a plan. So make sure you have a plan in place and that you take that step by step. And you know what you're doing every year, every month, every week, and every day to help you get closer to your goals. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. Goals without a plan are just a dream. You need to have a plan in place, and dreams are great. Dream big, but you have to have a plan to actually help you get there. So hopefully this has been helpful. Thank you for listening in. And I look forward to hearing from you guys and hearing some of your questions. Join me next time. I'm I've got like I said, a couple great guests coming up. We're going to talk about investing with your IRA, things like that. If you have a great story that you would like to share on the podcast, this is the Everyday Real Estate Investor podcast. We talk about being an everyday person, being busy, having family, having other stuff going on, and still being successful in real estate. I want to hear from you. So reach out to me. Let me know. Let's talk about your story. I know everybody else on this podcast will get inspired by hearing great stories of people overcoming obstacles and not having excuses, and making these things happen, even with all the things that are maybe taking up their time or focus, and not letting those things get in their way. So reach out. Let me know if you have a story that you want to share, an experience, a strategy, something like that. Would love to chat and connect. So until next time, go out there and make it a great rest of the day.